Hello, everyone, and welcome to another college football playoff quarterfinal preview. This time we've got Georgia against Notre Dame at the Sugar Bowl in Louisiana. The number 2 ranked Georgia Bulldogs, the SEC champions, come in at 11-2, and Notre Dame at 12-1 out of the Independent comes in as the 7 seed. I'm your host Sean Vowells, and I'm joined by Joe Meade. Joe, this is the last of the 4 college football playoff quarterfinals. It's 8:45 Eastern on ESPN, and it is the only game where the team that got a bye is favored. Georgia's favored by just 1 point. This one might be the most fascinating game. You've got two that are extremely close on the odds. Notre Dame comes in with a pretty convincing win over Indiana. Georgia comes in having lost their quarterback in the SEC championship. They win that anyway. What are some overarching thoughts coming into this one?
Sean, I'm going to be really honest. I think Notre Dame's been a solid team all year. If Carson Beck were playing this game, would Georgia not be 2-score favorites?
I mean, at least like 7 or 8, probably.
Yeah, that's my biggest issue, right? Because all year I've watched Georgia and I've watched Notre Dame. Carson Beck hasn't been spectacular this year. I think, most dog fans would agree, 28 TDs, 12 picks. But the drop-off from not-so-great Carson Beck to Gunnar Stockton, I don't think it's as drastic as people want to make it to be. I do think
They were losing that game when he came in, and they won.
Yeah, I do think that's going to matter. I think, having ETN in this game, too, is going to be a big factor. I don't think Notre Dame's really seen a back like him. Whether it was Woody Marks, I don't think Woody Marks quite lives up to the prolific attack Georgia has, but it's ETN, Frazier, receiver-wise, Arian Smith, love it. And, whether it's Delp or Urasek, the 2 tight end duo, I don't think the offensive weapons that Georgia has ever gotten enough credit in this little 4-year run they've had from 21 to the current day. I think they've had great receivers. Even Lad McConkey in the NFL, right? He's going off, breaking rookie records immediately. And in college, he wasn't talked about that often. He was a second-round pick, which sounds good, but, for someone who was almost a leading receiver on 2 national title teams, to not be given credit like that is pretty insane. So, that's one thing I think that's been overlooked a little, and I'm kind of shocked, quite frankly, especially with the SEC bias that ESPN gives Georgia, because it does exist. Not to say they're not a great team, but it does. And then defensively, right, Notre Dame hasn't seen a front 7 like Georgia. So I do think that Jeremiah Love is going to have some success in this game, but it's going to come down to Riley Leonard, period, point blank, Sean. Can he make plays with his legs? Can he make the tight window throws? And can he make the good decisions? Georgia's going to send pressure after him. Schubin's been calculated that over the years. I do think in this game, they've emphasized starting fast, and I think they know that if they can knock Notre Dame on the ground early, the game can be over and can get really ugly, right? Especially, let's face it, it's going to be mostly Georgia fans in the Sugar Bowl. I think this is the biggest game Notre Dame probably had, maybe even since their last playoff appearance in 2020. I know people will cite the Ohio State game last year. I really don't think, in the context of last year, once you viewed it in its totality, that game was as important as this one. So I think Irish faithful will show out, but the sheer number of Georgia fans in that region of the country is going to give them a slight home field advantage. So with that said, Georgia has the capability to knock them down early. It's going to come down to Gunnar Stockton not letting the moment get too big. And can Riley Leonard, frankly, have the game of his life? I don't really know. I'm not so sure.
Joe, coming in here, I think all of the question marks are really on Georgia. I think we know what Notre Dame is. They're really good. We know how they're going to beat you. How that Indiana game went was kind of how we thought it would go if Notre Dame looked good, and they did. Indiana's run defense was really, really good after that 98-yard run, and then they forced Riley Leonard to do some things. Indiana had a good front 7 defensively, but really it was only against the run, not much pass rush. So Georgia's going to have a different sort of pass rush than Indiana has, and Riley Leonard can be dangerous if he gets out of that, especially when he runs the ball. But just Georgia played a ridiculous schedule this year. They crushed Clemson in week 1. And then they had that great game against Alabama, which they were down big. They came all the way back, and then they lost. They won on the road at Texas. They lost it on the road at Ole Miss. They beat Tennessee. They had that incredible 8 overtime game against Georgia Tech, and then they beat Texas again in the SEC championship. It's just, most teams we think we know what they are, the more good teams that we play, but we've seen a number of different Georgia teams this year. And it really is going to come down to their defense for me. There's a way that Notre Dame just runs it right down their throats and they can't keep up with Gunnar Stockton. But if their defense can just be a little bit of a deterrent, like a little bit, and Georgia can score on a couple of their first possessions, I think that Georgia should probably win this game. I just think that Stockton has some footage on film now. Texas clearly didn't prepare for him, and they didn't really change what they were doing when he came into the game. And Notre Dame was my national championship pick before the playoffs, and I'm not going to change that right now. I think Notre Dame wins 28-21 in a game that is a little bit up and down early, and then once the teams settle in, I think Notre Dame or Georgia's offense just can't do enough.
Yeah, Sean, I'm just going to conclude it with my 3 main reasons I'm going to pick Georgia. Number one, Notre Dame, we've been in this situation before, whether it's been the Kelly era, the Freeman era, and I'm not going to try to do some voodoo reasoning. That's really not what I'm trying to do. It's just they've never really started these games so hot. They've kind of eased into these games, and I don't think in this environment that's a recipe for success. With that said, that's my second reasoning. I think Georgia starts this game hot. I think they jump on them early, and Notre Dame, even though I think they'll play pretty well, I think the hole they'll dig themselves in the first quarter, first half will be a little too much. And then third fold, I think Georgia has a clear talent advantage. I don't think it gets talked about enough. And I think the tight end combo, Urasek and Delp, is going to help open up this pass game, kind of give Gunnar Stockton a little security blanket, and then they can rely on the run game a little more. So I think Georgia wins a game, and the score might sound lopsided, but I don't think it'll be the domination we've seen of Notre Dame in the last, whether it was the BCS title game against Bama, the playoff games against Clemson and Bama. I don't think it'll be quite to that level, but it might feel that way based on the final score. I think Georgia wins 31-16. I think Notre Dame is like one of those situations I talk about a lot where they're a play away from being a play away. I just think Georgia's defense overwhelms them. I think Notre Dame gets in the red zone quite a few times, but can't convert on TDs, and I do think they force Riley Leonard into a bad decision or two. So give me the Dogs 31-16 to advance to the semifinals, something they've done now, or they will do if they win this game, the last 3 of the last 4 years, which is extremely impressive.
And Joe, just a logistics thing here. I don't know why this game isn't the Peach Bowl. I thought they had first pick because over Arizona State, who's the 2, and that game's in Atlanta. I don't know if there's some rule that you can't play there if your SEC championship was there, but just a little odd to me that this isn't the Peach Bowl. Maybe it's a conference thing. I don't know. But I don't know if Louisiana is going to be all that different. They still should have at least the crowd tilted towards them. Notre Dame fans obviously travel very well, but this spread, Joe, has really teetered back and forth. Notre Dame opened as favorites. Georgia just 1-point favorites right now. So it's pretty clear that both, a lot of people see both teams winning here, and it should be a really good one. The winner of this one will take on the winner of Boise State and Penn State in the semifinals. And Joe, this is the last game, so they'll know who they're playing. The winning team will know who they're playing here, and this should be a good one. We've got 2 teams that have shown, and multiple times this year, that they're really good football teams. And the first round was all chalk, and I'm not so sure. It would be something if the first round was all chalk, Joe, and then the second round, the teams that won in the first round all won again, which could happen. All of those teams were favorites at one point. At least 3 of them are still favorites. But, Joe, that is all we have for them today. We'll be back a couple of days after the game to recap it. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.